and it's about Star Wars games. Now, Star Wars has one of the richest worlds in gaming history, but some of the most exciting projects were never released. These canceled games often had big ideas, unique gameplay, or unrealized potential, and fans still talk about them today. So I'm going to go through the different Star Wars games that you might have never heard about that were in development and then were canceled. Because think about of all the Star Wars games that did make it to release, but whatever era, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, or if you want to talk about the Xbox One, Xbox Series, PS4, PS5. I mean, if you tried to name every Star Wars game, you'd need like an hour or two. That's with a list right in front of you. But let's look at some or talk about some that were canceled in the middle of development. The most famous one is Star Wars 1313. Announced in 2012, Star Wars 1313 was set to be a dark, gritty action adventure focused on Boba Fett as a younger mercenary. The setting was a criminal underworld beneath Coruscant with dangerous environments and ruthless enemies. It promised cinematic stealth driven gameplay with advanced combat and traversal, and the game was canned in 2013 after Disney acquired Lucasfilms and restructured LucasArts. It didn't look like any other Star Wars game released beforehand. It was more mature, more story driven, and more ambitious. So that's why a lot of people still remember, if they were following the game while it was being developed, what they heard that this game would be like. Now, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 3 uh, was canceled. Everyone knows Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 became classics, so many assumed there was no reason not to expect a third one. There were multiple attempts, or at least rumors of multiple attempts, including a project by Obsidian, but none of those attempts turned into actual releases. And a later attempt by Asper was reported in early development, but never materialized into a full game. The Old Republic era is one of the richest time periods in Star Wars lore, and fans want a modern RPG set with deep choices and expanded narrative. So, yeah, Knights of the Old Republic 3, if you were wondering why that game never came out, they were thinking about it. But, um, there were rumors about it, but it just never came to be, unfortunately. Star Wars First Assault. This was going to be a multiplayer first person shooter before EA exclusive deal. It featured class based combat and first person shooter gameplay in the Star Wars universe. And the project was canceled around the time EA secured the rights to make games. Now, this wasn't going to be a Battlefront clone. It was going to be something tighter and more competitive, like Call of Duty, but with a Star Wars style. So if something like Call of Duty but in the Star Wars universe is something that you thought sounded cool, unfortunately, once EA got the rights to make games to develop Star Wars games exclusively, that's what killed First Assault. Now, before EA came, there was Star Wars Battlefront 3. Before EA rebooted it, there was an ambitious one in development, not the one that came out in 2015. Well, I'm not talking about that one. This was going to have larger battles, space combat, and more dynamic gameplay. Many believe it will competed better with modern shooters and added features we still haven't seen in official Battlefront releases. Star Wars: The Clone Wars Republic Heroes 2. It was a sequel to Republic Heroes. It was discussed and even teased. It aimed to expand the action adventure gameplay, include more characters, and flesh out storylines from the animated Clone Wars series. The first game had charm but limited scope. A bigger, better sequel exercising the Clone Wars license could have been great. A few other games didn't make it because Disney changed course, licensing deals shifted, especially when EA got exclusive rights to develop these games, or internal studios shut down. Some noteworthy mentions include an open world RPG. It was rumored to have been in early concept stages before shifting priorities. There was going to be Star Wars MMO before Star Wars: The Old Republic. Early attempts and MMO before Star Wars: The Old Republic never fully launched. And there were scattered attempts at Star Wars titles for Nintendo handhelds in the early 2000s that never saw a release. Every shift meant new ideas were shelved in favor of safer, more marketable games. Now, even though these games never launched, many of these influenced later titles. So while some of these were canceled, they weren't gone forever. They just looked different or played different once they were released from what people were expecting at first. The hype around them pushed fans to imagine what could have been, and developers who worked on the concepts often talked about their passion for the universe, making the cancellations feel personal. Why do people care? Unrealized potential. These games had mechanics or stories that were never replicated anywhere else. Nostalgia and curiosity. Fans wanted to see these concepts come to life. Um, Strong legacy titles exist because games like Knights of the Old Republic and Battlefront are so beloved. Anything in that lineage feels like a loss if it didn't come out. Um, I never played Knights of the Old Republic, but I have played Battlefront, both the original games on Xbox, and the ones on when I had Game Pass on Xbox One, and I love the Battlefront games. I can play those, so it is. I mean, if we were going to get a third Battlefront and it was going to have larger battles, that would have been something to look forward to. Unfortunately, don't know if that's ever going to come out. Um, what canceled Star Wars game would you bring back if you magically could? Like if you had a wand said this game's going to be fully developed um, and you could only choose one, what game would it be? Do you think these games would have changed the genre of whatever? How revolutionary do you think these games would have been if they were revolutionary at all? Is Disney and EA too restrictive, or does corporate ownership just make these projects more complicated? And which era of Star Wars has the most potential for a game? Old Republic, Clone Wars, Rebellion, or New Republic? Um, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.